Hi, second graders. Mrs. Cicchini here with your grammar lesson for today. For grammar today, we're going to actually focus on poetry. So I'm going to introduce poetry and some things to look for in poems, and then I'll show you what your work is for the day. So, poetry is a way of writing, and poems usually express people's feelings or their ideas. And it's usually written differently than a story or an informational text is written. So, poetry is written in what is called stanzas. So, sometimes in text we see paragraphs or we just see sentences, but poetry is written in a stanza. And a stanza is a group of lines in a poem that go together. They are similar to the paragraphs that we see in books. So in just a minute, I'll show you what a stanza is. When we have poetry, we have certain characteristics of poetry or things we can find in poetry. And they are called figurative language. And figurative language is words and phrases that don't mean what they say. So an example is personification. And that's when we give an item human characteristics. So we might say the legs of a table. Well, a table doesn't really have legs. That's personification. We're giving an item something that a human would have. But the ones we're going to focus on today is alliteration, rhyme, and repetition. So we're going to start with alliteration. And you may know this already, but you might not have known the word for it. So alliteration is when a writer puts several sounds that begin with the same sound close together or next to each other. So if you've ever said a tongue twister, then you've said an alliteration. So just like tongue twisters, you hear the same sounds over and over again. So here's one right here. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So the writer puts several sounds that begin with the same sound. So you can see that each word, or a lot of the words, have the letter P, but we don't want to focus on the letter. We want to focus on the sound. And they all make the P sound. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So that's a tongue twister because it has all of those sounds so close together. So in poetry, we call that alliteration. But when we have alliteration, you want to be very careful. The words have to start with the same sound, not the same letter. So we're going to try this out and see if there can be words that start with the same letter, but not the same sound, because that would not be alliteration. Alliteration has to have the same sound. So let's try it. Time and 10. Do those words have alliteration? Time, 10. So I'm thinking, do they both start with the same sound? I know they both start with the letter T, but do they have the same sound of T? Time, 10. And yes, I know that my mouth makes the same sound for both time, 10. All right, let's look at our next one. Cake and keep. Do these words have alliteration? Remember, focus on the sound. Cake, keep. And my answer is yes. So remember, do not worry about the letter. Worry about the sound. Okay, C can make the K sound, and K makes the K sound. So yes, they have alliteration even though the letters are different. Start and sheep. Start, sheep. You can almost pay attention to what your mouth's doing. You can look at my mouth or say it. Ready? Start and sheep. Do those words have alliteration? No. So they both start with S, but they make different sounds because of the letter that comes after them. So they do not have alliteration. First, phone. Do those words have alliteration? Do they have the same sound in the beginning? First, phone. Yes, they do. They both say f. Even though they have different letters, they both make the same sound, and that's what we want to focus on. So here is a poem called Freddie the Frog. And this is one stanza. Later on, I'll show you a poem with more than one, but this is just one stanza. So I'm going to read it, and then we're going to see if we can find the alliteration in it. Freddie Frog wanted to fly. He hoped he could hop high in the sky, so he could bounce with the bees buzzing by. But when Freddie Frog tried to fly, he found out that frogs don't belong in the sky. So, as I was reading that, I found some words with alliteration. I would look at my first sentence, Freddie Frog wanted to fly. And I noticed that I said the f sound a lot. Freddie, frog, and fly. And then you can look at your second sentence. He hoped he could hop high in the sky. And I noticed I did the H sound for he hoped he hop high. Okay, and then see if you can find the alliteration in so he could bounce with the so he could bounce with the bees buzzing by. This is a tongue twister. Let's see if you can find the sound. Right, the B sound. Very good. So that's alliteration. There's more in the last two lines that maybe you can read and find out. But I'm going to move on to our next one. Our next part of poetry is rhyming. So rhyming is when two words end with the same sound. So alliteration was the same sound in the beginning. Rhyme is the same sound at the end. So poets use rhyming words to make their writing sound different. It can add a special or more musical tone to their poem. And rhyming words are usually found at the end of a poem. So let's take a look at words that rhyme. Girl and twirl. They have the same ending sound. Cat, hat. Pear, hair. Notice they're spelled differently, but they have the same ending sound. They don't have the same letters, but they make the same sound. So here's a poem that has two stanzas, or what we would call two paragraphs. So a stanza is a group of lines written together. So here's a group of lines, and here's a group of lines. So it says, my garden's planted all in rows, some plants to look at and some to eat. This is where the basil grows, and strawberries that can't be beat. My favorite flower is the rose. Its thorns are sharp, but it smells so sweet. The ground is soft beneath my toes. A garden walk is a treat. So, like I said, rhyming words are found at the end of a line usually, and they have the same ending sound. So, I'm going to look at the end of the line and I see rose, and I'm going to find one that rhymes. So, rose, eat. Nope. Rose, grows. Yeah, that rhymes. Okay, let's go to the next row. Eat, grows, eat, and beat. Yep, that rhymes. So notice it skips a line. Rose rhymes with grows, eat rhymes with beat. Down here, rose and toes rhyme, and sweet and treat rhyme. going to skip that one. So then we have repetition. So repetition is when a writer uses the same lines, words, or phrases more than once. So think about the word repeating. When you repeat something over and over again, you say it again and again. So they usually do this to emphasize a phrase or idea. Sometimes it's the main idea or the main topic that the poet is saying over again. And it's telling you that that phrase or line or sentence or word is really important. So here's our poem for repetition. And this is just one stanza. It's just one group of sentences. There's no break in the middle where there was in our garden poem. Here was a break right here. So it's called Firefighters. It says, firefighters are brave. Firefighters are strong. Firefighters save. Firefighters help when things go wrong. I would love to be a firefighter to make someone's day a little brighter. So what is being repeated in that poem? Ready? I'll show you again. Firefighters. That was said a lot of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 6 if you count the title. So that was being repeated. That's repetition. And it's being repeated because it's the main idea of the poem. The poem is telling us about firefighters, so the poet used that word over and over again, so you would know that was the main idea. So today for your work in your Google slideshow or in your remote learning pack, you are going to work on a poem. And your poem looks like this. It tells you a little bit about poetry and rhyme. Says poems sometimes rhyme. We also notice how a poet repeats words and phrases, and sometimes a poet uses alliteration. So again, here is our rhyme and alliteration. So you're going to read the poem and maybe circle any words that rhyme or any alliteration or anything that's repeated. Then you're going to do the questions on the next page. So you might want to look at those questions first and then read the poem. So it's pretty long, and it shows you how many stanzas it has with these numbers. It has 1, 2, 3 stanzas there. So it says, what is the poem mostly about? And how do you know? Are there repeating lines? What are they? Why? And then some rhyming words. So you're going to read the poem and answer those questions and see if you can find rhyme, alliteration, or repeated lines in it. And that is your grammar work for today. I will see you guys next time. Bye.